Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Tuesday morning. Hopefully, we're having an all right one out there. But again, Debby continuing to work on through the United States here and bringing big time impacts. In fact, we saw multiple tornadoes last night in the low country of South Carolina, from Beaufort up towards Charleston. That on top of flooding that is already beginning. And we've still got multiple days left of this with Debby, even just in the southeast alone. So we've got a real marathon here. It's not so much a sprint. It's going to be a lot more of a marathon with Debby. And again, those impacts are even going to extend up the eastern seaboard through the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and even up into Atlantic Canada. So a lot of folks with a lot to kind of watch here. And on top of that, we have more to watch in the tropics behind Debby, an area in the Caribbean, and a robust wave coming off of Africa that could potentially develop here on down the road. And I've got the latest for you on that here in today's video as well. Now, if you're new, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology major at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, here to give you the latest updates, again, on what we're seeing here in the tropics and even what we're seeing back home in the United States with this very active weather pattern. Now, a couple of housekeeping things here very quickly. I very likely will not have a video out tonight. I'll be storm chasing the next couple of days in South Carolina and North Carolina as Debby moves on through. I will still try to get morning videos out, but the quality will be much less than this. So just go ahead and prepare for that here on down the road. But with all that said, let's go ahead and jump on into the forecast here because, again, we do have a lot to discuss. And again, the big story is Debby. Here she is, not hard to find on satellite here. Again, just sitting over the southeastern United States, currently near Savannah, Georgia, not far from moving offshore into the Atlantic. And I think it likely will at some point this afternoon or evening. But whether it's just offshore or onshore, the impacts are going to remain about the same here through much of today. Now, that's not the only thing we're watching. We do have some clustering of thunderstorms down here into the Caribbean. These could eventually try to develop into some more, I guess, tropical in nature in terms of a cyclone, at least. It could try to turn into a depression or a storm here on down the road, and the NHC has designated that area. There's also an area off the coast of Africa, or really still on Africa, that's about to move off the coast that I'm watching. And I'll show you that here later on in the video. But again, the latest on what we're seeing that is currently designated by the NHC. Again, Debby, a weak tropical storm now near Savannah, Georgia, and then this area that has still only a low chance of developing, but a chance nonetheless to develop in the Western Caribbean or the Southern Gulf of Mexico. And should it develop, could impact some folks here potentially in the United States. If not that, then definitely Mexico on down the road. So we'll take a look at that here towards the end of the video. But again, all eyes on Debby currently here. She is kind of a shell of what she looked like upon landfall yesterday morning in Florida. You'll notice we've got a lot of dry air kind of working into the inner core of the system, and it's kind of spread out a good bit as well. Now, this may not stay the same for the rest of Debby's life. Again, she's trying to get offshore here, and if she can manage to get far enough offshore to get kind of over the Gulf Stream here before hooking back into South Carolina, we could see some re-strengthening and some reorganization of the storm structure here, which again would lead to higher end wind and surge impacts than we're currently expecting through portions of coastal South Carolina and North Carolina. But again, right now, all indications are Debby will, probably stay a tropical storm, but really, again, still cannot rule out that Category 1 strength possibility should she get back offshore and able to reorganize. But right now, we do still have some very feisty banding in the storm system, and we can see that very well on radar. Again, here's that kind of hollow core, but towards the north and to the let's see if I can figure out what direction I'm looking at here. Towards the north and the east of the storm here in that right front quadrant, we have this big time rainfall that's ongoing. Also a tornado threat. Again, I mentioned we had multiple tornadoes last night in South Carolina. I imagine we'll have a couple more today before all is said and done. And again, I'll be out there chasing it. So you never know. Maybe you'll see some footage of it from me. But again, still a very feisty tropical storm, and big heavy rainfall is still the number one concern. But we are also seeing some storm surge as well out of this. And we'll take a look at that storm surge forecast here in just a second. But first off, latest cone from the NHC, and I'm going to update this really quickly just to see if we have the latest statistics as of 8 a.m. Looks like still a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Pressure is sitting just below 1,000 millibars. And again, you'll notice the location of the center here is not far from getting offshore. It'll probably try to do so this afternoon, and that is the latest forecast from the NHC. By 2 p.m., Debby will be just offshore here of the coast of Georgia and South Carolina. So we'll be watching that for sure. But already, again, seeing some pretty strong winds here moving ashore up to tropical storm strength. And again, that's going to increase this surge into coastal South Carolina today. You'll notice these stronger winds just offshore, while we have relatively calm winds over the inland portions of Georgia and South Carolina right now. Again, we could be gusting up to 20, 25, maybe even 30 miles an hour, but right now, water is going to be the main threat. Now, the forecast from here on out, again, Debby expected to re-strengthen a little over the Atlantic, getting back up to higher end tropical storm strength, probably about 60 to 70 miles an hour. Again, if it gets further offshore, do not rule out hurricane strength by any means. But still at least a pretty feisty tropical storm here with landfall sometime likely early Thursday morning. Now, that's assuming, again, it takes this green track. Now, some of our models kind of just ride this up the coast a little bit and kind of like this. If that's the case, then one, we won't really see much re-strengthening. Also, landfall could be more like Wednesday instead of Thursday. Also, if it's a little bit further offshore and it does kind of this and moves up towards Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, then landfall could be more like Thursday afternoon. So, details still to iron out here, and that's just the tough part of these storms that like to meander, as it can be tough to kind of figure out exactly where they're going to go. But eventually, it should be inland into the Carolinas by Thursday afternoon as a weakening tropical storm, and will continue to weaken Friday before moving up into North Carolina, eventually up into Virginia, and becoming a remnant low in the mid-Atlantic. And then finally, just riding up the northeast coastline. Again, expected to be, over the D.C. area Friday night into Saturday. And then by Sunday at that same time, Saturday night into Sunday, it's all the way up near the Gulf of Maine. So right now it's meandering, but by the time it gets towards Virginia and northbound, this system's really going to pick up forward motion here, which is good. That should help limit some of the rainfall compared to what we're seeing in the southeast. But we could still see gusty conditions here up the East Coast, even into potentially Nova Scotia, come the second half of this weekend into our Sunday, and can't even rule out some gusty winds and all into Newfoundland as the storm moves on through. Now, latest spaghetti models, again, Debby expected to get back offshore sometime today. After that, the question is, where does it move inland? Again, some of our models move this up into Myrtle Beach. Some of them bring it all the way back near to Savannah and almost just loop back inland. That part is still up for interpretation by the viewer. And again, I think personally, I feel strongest that this is going to come in somewhere between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, probably the McClellanville to Georgetown corridor there through Cat Island. I think is going to be the most likely second landfall. But again, if you're watching in Myrtle Beach and you're thinking, all right, well, that's good, it'll be, there instead of here. Well, again, the strongest side of the storm and kind of the roughest part has always been the east side. So if this is south of you and to the west of you, then you're going to really get a lot of those rain bands. It's really going to up the rainfall totals. It's going to, increase the surge some and bring in that tornado threat with it. So we'll need to watch that. But either way, all of our models do agree this will get back into the northeast here by the time we're getting into this weekend. So where exactly it comes inland into South Carolina isn't really important for you folks in the mid-Atlantic and northeast. All right, latest watches, warnings, advisories, all the red shaded boxes you see, those are tropical storm warnings in effect. That yellow shaded box you see is a tornado watch, and all the green you see are flood watches. So again, tornadoes are going to be a threat today. Flooding will continue to be a threat today. Tropical storm conditions will be a threat today. And in fact, we're already seeing even these tropical storm warnings being extended up the coast, and will likely even get put potentially into portions of southeastern North Carolina by the time all is said and done. We'll continue to watch out for that. But even into the northeast, we've already got flood watches up here for the I-95 corridor, Philadelphia to Bridgeport, even there just south of Hartford and through Long Island. Going to see a lot of rain in this region, one from a front moving through, but then Debby on top of that is only going to exacerbate the problem. So again, rainfall continues to be the number one threat with this storm system, with tornadoes and surge and potentially high winds upon second landfall being those secondary threats with Debby. Now, speaking of storm surge, again, 2 to 4 feet expected throughout the entire South Carolina coastline, which isn't something to just write off. Again, I know this isn't, 10, 20 feet of storm surge, but 2 to 4 feet is enough that places that, normally flood are going to flood. That on top of all of the freshwater flooding we're going to see, there's going to be plenty of roadway issues. So we're going to have yards flooded. And unfortunately, I can almost guarantee is somewhere in South Carolina, it's going to have some high water rescues from the combination of the ocean and all of that rain that is falling. But we could even see some storm surge up into North Carolina from Cape Fear to Surf City, North Carolina, up to 3 feet. Wilmington and areas just south there, again, also up to 4 feet, much like the South Carolina coastline. All the way down to even the mouth of the St. Mary's River, where we could see a little bit more storm surge down that way. So again, very active scene here for the storm surge forecast. The rainfall forecast is no different. A level 4 out of 4 rainfall threat for excessive rainfall and flash flooding risk from Wilmington, Charleston, Savannah, even up into Raleigh-Durham now is newly added to this. Fayetteville and back towards the New Bern and Greenville, North Carolina area, probably going to see some flooding as well. So the last time that we saw this level of flooding threat into the Carolinas was Hurricane Florence. So again, this is not something that we can just write off. And obviously, we don't like comparing storms to other storms. It's like comparing apples to oranges because everyone's going to experience different impacts with each storm. But somebody is already or is going to get walloped by heavy rainfall. In fact, they already have down through Charleston and Savannah. We've had some totals above a foot of rain. So, the rainfall is still maintaining as the biggest threat. But again, not the only threat, also a tornado threat today. Now, I'll go and guarantee you right now, by the time you're watching this map is updated, but I'll go ahead and just circle it for you or draw it for you. Anyone kind of in this orange line probably has a chance of seeing a tornado today. Anyone in this green area is going to have the highest chance of seeing a tornado today. So that includes Charleston, Georgetown, McClellanville, Marion, Myrtle Beach, the North Strand, Wilmington, even up there into portions of the southern Outer Banks. And we'll do it all again tomorrow. Another tornado threat for basically the same regions, although tomorrow probably a little bit closer to the coast, as again, we're expecting Debby to be a little bit further offshore. That will bring the tornado threat further south and east with it. But again, tornado threat the next 2 days, and the following day, Friday, we could even see a tornado threat into eastern North Carolina and eastern Virginia. So, it is a very real threat that we're going to be watching here. All right, latest timing from some of our models here. This is the high resolution rapid refresh model. I think handling the storm relatively okay. To be honest, most of our hurricane models and mesoscale models, I think, are kind of struggling a little bit, but we'll use this model because I think it's probably doing the best out of all of them. And here we go. This is this morning into this afternoon. Again, Debby will slowly try to work back offshore near Savannah, but the main threat will be right into this region. Again, that northeast quadrant. We're going to have a tornado threat, a flooding threat, and an increased storm surge threat. Much like we saw last night in Charleston, a very heavy band of rain set up with many waterspouts that moved ashore. I think we'll see a similar story today into South Carolina, further up the coastline towards, again, the Myrtle Beach area. But even south of there, again, notice how this is extending all the way into the Gulf, which is one of the reasons we're having such a rainfall problem. This is pulling moisture from the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, which is obviously more than enough to really bring a lot of precipitation. So again, main tornado threat, main flooding threat into South Carolina and southeastern North Carolina today, but still rain back on the backside of this into southeast Georgia and some scattered showers and storms down into Florida as well. Now we move this into overnight tonight. I think at this point, this is when Debby is going to be the furthest offshore and maybe even potentially going into tomorrow afternoon. But again, it really depends how far offshore it is again. Is it like the high resolution rapid refresh and it's barely offshore? If that's the case, we'll see a continued tornado threat overnight tonight into the Grand Strand, into the PD of South Carolina. But winds will stay calm relatively. Surge might underperform slightly. And, it'll just, kind of keep going into Wednesday. Now, if the low is more out here, it kind of, moves a little bit further offshore, then that tornado threat's going to move closer to the coast. Again, it's going to move out of the inland areas. That flooding threat is going to calm down a little bit for, a couple of hours. But then the storm will get stronger. Wind speeds will increase. Storm surge threat will increase. And then that second landfall will be more impactful. But either way, I think all day today and probably tomorrow as well, we're going to see that continued tornado threat and flooding threat into the Carolinas as the storm kind of slowly moves up the coast. And then this model, again, bringing it back inland into Myrtle Beach pretty early. This would be more Wednesday overnight into Thursday compared to some of our other models that bring it in Thursday morning. But again, we'll just have to check the timing there. But again, whenever it moves inland, that's when that rainfall threat will continue to increase and that tornado threat. Now, wind gusts today, it'll be a little gusty in spots here, especially in the coastal sections of South Carolina, but all things considered, nothing we can't handle. We definitely probably will have some power outages from wind, but again, the storm is still over land and has weakened a pretty good amount here. So Will still be gusty though. But the bigger concern again will be how strong does it get when it gets offshore here. This model again keeps it relatively weak here, but then moves it back inland. And again, could see some feisty tropical storm force winds into southeastern North Carolina and into the Grand Strand whenever we get that landfall. But again, that's just one model, and we will continue to watch that. Now, rainfall for this region, again, still the #1 threat into South Carolina. Charleston and Myrtle Beach, still potentially up to a foot of rainfall. I think especially Myrtle Beach and Florence are going to have more to come. Charleston, I don't want to say you've seen most of your rainfall yet, but you've seen probably a good chunk of it. So again, more could still fall. Same story for Statesboro and Savannah. Could still see, half a foot of rainfall. But again, the worst of it probably over as the storm continues to work offshore. The Midlands of South Carolina, Columbia, especially places east of Columbia, kind of towards Camden and that area, going to see a good amount of rain, still half a foot to a foot. More areas here into the western Midlands, probably more 3 to 6 inches of rain to come with this storm system. Now, once we get into the mid-Atlantic, also a lot of rainfall to come, and this is the latest European model. This just ran, so this is hot off the press. We're going to be looking at this together, actually. So we're going to pick this up Wednesday morning, and I'll tell you, the European is much further offshore than many of our other models with Debby Center. So the European has been strengthening it a little bit more and has thus made impacts Wednesday afternoon a little less. No matter what, today we're going to see the same impacts I mentioned. But as for tomorrow, again, how far offshore the storm gets is going to be important. The European is a little more offshore, so Wednesday afternoon might be a little bit calmer than today, but again, then the storm would be strengthening near the Gulf Stream here and would be reorganizing and re-getting its structure back together while still throwing in some of these bands into the coastal sections of the Carolinas, specifically Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Wilmington. That area could see that storm surge increase and that tornado threat Wednesday afternoon once again before the European eventually re-strengthens this a bit and moves it back into South Carolina Thursday morning as a tropical storm on the latest model run. So intensity a little bit down from previous runs. That's good here for Thursday morning, but then works it up the kind of I-95 corridor. And look at all of this rain. Again, where it comes inland is going to be very important. If it comes inland into Myrtle Beach, then this entire rain shield you're seeing is going to shift that way. If it comes inland over Charleston, then it's going to shift that way. So it's going to be very important, again, here where this comes inland. But should it come inland here, kind of just north of Charleston, maybe near McClellanville, as this model suggests, we're going to get a lot of rain Thursday through the I-77 corridor, Columbia up towards Charlotte, definitely, Chester County, Rock Hill, South Carolina, Fayetteville, Monroe, up towards Statesville. Again, a lot of rain is going to move in and could bring a flooding threat with it. And then this continues to work inland. And in fact, again, this is far enough west, that even the foothills of North Carolina and Virginia could get in on some heavy rainfall. We would need to watch out for that. Also Thursday afternoon, that tornado threat will maintain itself in the eastern Carolinas, again, much like the past couple of days, but moving further inland with this tropical low. And again, we could see multiple tornadoes out of this system. And then finally, it gets out of the Carolinas, and we should have nicer conditions, I think, by Saturday through Georgia and both Carolinas. So again, we've got a marathon. Today's Tuesday, and this will finally clear out of the Carolinas by Saturday. So, we've got some time to go. Now, max wind gust, again, this is max over 6 hours. So this is kind of the worst you'll see probably, at least with this model run. Now, again, if the storm goes a little bit further offshore, gets a little stronger, then, that'll change things. But here we go for landfall on Thursday. Again, feisty winds offshore. That'll bring in that 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, but gusting up near 50, maybe 55 miles an hour from Wilmington to Myrtle Beach down towards Georgetown, Surfside Beach, Murrells Inlet, Cherry Grove. Could also get a little gusty into the Midlands of South Carolina, maybe up to 40 mile an hour wind gusts. Again, that's probably the worst that you'll see. Same story back here towards Fayetteville, and then probably less than that back towards Charlotte and Greenville, Spartanburg, probably more in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range. But we'll have to watch again, how well does the storm maintain itself? Could some of these higher gusts move inland? It's possible, but again, the storm, it's going to need to do some real re-strengthening to be able to regain its wind field that it's already lost pretty significantly. So I would imagine these will be a little underdone, this will probably be a little overdone, maybe subtract about 10 miles an hour from these totals for wind gusts that you see here for Thursday evening into Friday, and then eventually the storm works up towards Virginia and into the Delmarva, where we could see some gusty winds into the weekend. But again, the wind threat will be much lower there, mainly just a rainfall and isolated tornado threat up that way. All right, rainfall threat in this area. Again, North Carolina, you're going to get a lot. It hasn't really rained from the storm yet, from Fayetteville to Raleigh to Greenville, Jacksonville, Greensboro, Charlotte. That'll change again going into Thursday, and we could see upwards of a foot of rainfall, especially here, I think, from Fayetteville to Raleigh down towards the Lumberton area and into Wilmington. A lot of rain on the way. Now, the I-85 corridor from Charlotte to Greensboro, again, depending on track, we could still get upwards of half a foot of rain in spots. That would be more than enough to cause problems. Could see the same thing up into the Danville, Virginia area, but total should die off pretty quickly once you get west of I-77. Greenville, Spartanburg, probably only 1 to 3 inches. Asheville, maybe that. So again, these tropical systems have a very fine line on where the rain kind of cuts off, and we'll have to very closely monitor that fine line. But nonetheless, some people are going to get a lot of rain that's going to cause a lot of problems. All right, the Northeast, you've kind of got a 1-2 punch here. You're getting rain this afternoon. Again, a front moving through. This will cause, some isolated flooding on its own. That's why we already have that flood watch in effect. Also could see some strong storms out of this, much like yesterday. In fact, we had a tornado in Buffalo, New York yesterday, which was pretty crazy to see the footage of that. But main threat today, again, maybe a couple isolated strong storms, including a tornado or two. But flooding will be the big time threat for most people, again, as is very heavy rain bands move through the Northeast today and into tomorrow. Now, it's Wednesday afternoon into Thursday. Again, we'll still see some rain around, but parts of the Northeast New England will get a little bit of a break. But then here comes Debby during the weekend. This is Friday afternoon. Watch this surge of moisture northward, and then into Saturday, very heavy rounds of rainfall through much of coastal and interior Northeast. And that will continue. But the good news is moving much quicker than it was in the Southeast. So again, we could see some winds pick up. We could see a lot of rainfall. And again, maybe even an isolated tornado threat here along the coast as this moves through. But rainfall will continue to be the main threat. And again, by the time it's in here, it's out of here. So this is Friday afternoon. This is Saturday afternoon. You'll notice already clear through the western Northeast. And then by the time we get into Sunday, even morning, let alone afternoon, much nicer conditions take over for much of the Northeast, but again, could still see, some heavy rainfall totals upwards of half a foot, again, including what we're going to see today, tomorrow, and all the way through Debby. Some areas are definitely probably going to see some flooding out of this. Again, the bullseye really right along the I-95 corridor from Baltimore up through Connecticut, even Western Mass, down through the Hudson River Valley into Scranton, PA, and even back towards Harrisburg. Again, could see some heavy rainfall. So watching out for that for you folks. And then Eastern Canada, Atlantic Canada, same story. We're going to see some rainfall out of Debby. Again, moving much quicker at this point, though. So here she comes. This is Saturday afternoon. You'll notice some of that heavy rain moving into Eastern Canada. I'll even back this up a little bit, even there towards the New York border through kind of the Quebec area. Again, seeing some heavy rain Friday afternoon. And then we get into Saturday afternoon, moving through other parts of Eastern Canada, and then eventually into Nova Scotia by Saturday evening, and then into New Brunswick by Sunday. So again, moving pretty quick, and then out of here just as soon as it was there. Sorry, I'm still really tired, if you couldn't tell. Okay, so latest on these other threats that we're watching, and again, there are a couple that we are slightly concerned about here. Sorry, the map is a little different than it should be here. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So again, we are going to see multiple threats. I know what the problem is. It is zoomed in from the other map. There we go. That should fix that problem. All right, let's see if that's going to do it. Maybe, we'll see. Something like that. Either way, we're going to take a look at these other models real quick for the potential of tropical development in the Caribbean and potentially even back into the Atlantic Ocean in the main development region before all is said and done here come this week. So again, we've got a storm, or not a storm, but an open wave in the Caribbean here, again bringing some widespread rainfall here over some sections of Central America. This could have a chance to develop. Now, this is this coming Thursday. You'll notice it's got a pretty good moisture field here. It's also getting some moisture out of the Pacific, but there is some dry air nearby in the Gulf of Mexico into even portions of the Caribbean itself. So that could limit development for sure. Also, wind shear is not perfect, but it's relatively calm. Now, you'll notice especially we've got some calmer spots out here and into the Gulf as well. Going into this Thursday and towards the weekend. So development could try, to get its act together here come, going, into the later part of this week. Sorry, I'm kind of a word salad right now. But again, we'll watch for that development chances. But that's not the only thing I'm watching here. I'm also watching the potential of some development out into parts of the main development region. So here we go. This is a tropical wave that is going to be moving off the coast of Africa within a couple days, and some of our models are pretty bullish on it. Again, it's kind of this area right in here that we're seeing. You'll notice already a couple waves in front of it as well that we'll be watching. But again, the models are especially excited about this guy as it kind of moves out here into the main development region. And again, we're getting into August here, so it's that time of the year that these storms out in this part of the world have a higher chance of developing. Also, some MJO patterns are going to kind of move through to potentially help development with this system. But we take a look again at the latest European models for this storm system. This is Debby over the southeast again. So watching Debby here, we're watching this potential development in the Caribbean. But watch what happens with this wave. Eventually, if I turn this really ahead into time, we get again Debby, does what she does into the southeast. But then we get this tropical wave to try to develop into the main development region. This is going into this weekend here, Sunday, again near the Lesser Antilles by this point in time, and eventually gets into a favorable enough environment here that we see some development here into a tropical storm near the Bahamas within 7 to 10 days. So nothing from the NHC yet, but I do suspect over the next couple of days we'll probably get a yellow bubble on the map for this one. And again, we even have some kind of support with our ensemble members. Now, this is the GFS. Again, it doesn't do too much with the Caribbean system. That one is downtrended a little bit, but we do see some members trying to develop that wave somewhere near the Caribbean or the Southwest Atlantic near the Bahamas. So again, that's the GFS and its ensemble members. You take a look at the European, even more members here develop this just kind of east of the Bahamas here. And as for steering currents, again, we would have to wait and see. This could curve out to sea. This could maybe get shoved back a little bit. In fact, it may just form down here and not even get up there and get into the Caribbean in itself. So we'll see. Again, plenty of time to monitor it, and we absolutely will here in the long run. But again, Debby's still the main story right now, and one that we should be focused on throughout the next couple of days. Alrighty, I'd appreciate it, folks. Again, probably not a video tonight. The videos for the next couple of days will be a little weird, but stay tuned for some storm chasing content here as I'm out and about here tracking Debby near the low country and PD of South Carolina, and even potentially into the Sand Hills of North Carolina. So have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you all next time.